So can you unmute yourself?
Hello? Can you hear us?
Yeah.
Yes, you are audible.
Okay. Okay.
Well,
Can't understand that person.
Oh, I think everybody's just joining. Oh, I can see your picture, Demon.
These all the people that you worked with before?
Not all, but I'm trying to recognize names.
And know when we're supposed to start.
More people are joining.
That's the one you're supposed to. It's like it's signaling when to start.
Yeah. So good to see so many people coming. Just let us know when you want us to start. We don't want to start if we're still gathering our relatives here.
yes, yes.
Can't understand you.
Yes.
Hi. Hi.
Tell them we can't understand it.
Yeah, I did. Very nice to be here.
I wonder if they can understand us.
I believe so. I asked if they could hear, and somebody gave me the thumbs up.
Okay.
Yeah. Very clearly. Someone's in Winnipeg. Hey. 204 represent. I spent many years in Winnipeg. It's very early here, so I'm having coffee.
Oh, I said something on there.
Hmm?
Oh, it disappeared. There was a line of
Oh.
text.
While we're waiting to get started, I just wanted to say on behalf of myself and my sister and our brother that we're very humbled and honored to be here, and gratitude to you, Demon, for reaching out. I'm sorry, we're doing a major research project right now, and emails got buried. They get buried daily.
Good evening. Am I audible?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm Ankona from Center for Comparative Literature, Bhasha Bhavan, Vishwabharati. I welcome back everyone to the last session of the first day of the international conference titled Interrogating National Literatures, Cultural Responses of Indigenous Peoples in Canada and India from 2000 to 2020, organized by Center for Comparative Literature, Bhasha Bhavan, Vishwabharati. We are now going to begin the highly anticipated Lee Maracle Memorial Lecture. I request Professor Debashri Dottoray to take over the session as chairperson. Professor Debashri Dottoray is head of the department and associate professor at Department of Comparative Literature, Jadavpur University, and coordinator at the Center for Canadian Studies, Jadavpur University. We are fortunate to have respected Columpa Bobb and Tania Carter with us for this session as speakers. Over to you, Professor Dottoray.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ankana. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here today with everyone. Lee Maracle, as we all know, has been an inspiration for many of us. For us at the Center for Canadian Studies at Jadavpur, she has been a mentor, friend, and someone we have looked up to always. She has been an inspiration. Professor Sucharita Chattopadhyay, who's over here, has also been pivotal in this journey with Maracle. It gives me also extra pleasure that this is happening with the help of our old friend, crony, and partner in crime in many ways, Dr. Dhiman Bhattacharya, and I'm glad that we've been gathering for this occasion. I also am extremely honored that this is going to happen with Columpa and Tania and everyone else. And I would, of course, hand over the mic per se to Columpa and everyone. Before that, a few things that I wanted to say. One is a particular poem by Lee that has always haunted me. And I think when I say this, you will know why this has haunted me at different points of time. It says, I know nothing of great mysteries, no less of creation. I do know that the further backward in time that I travel, the more grandmothers, and further forward, the more grandchildren. I'm obligated to both. We are indeed obliged and obligated to the stories that we hear. Columpa Bobb is, as we all know, an award-winning actor, writer, and instructor. Acting credits span screen and stage, including roles with the Fire Hall Arts Center and Native Earth Performing Arts, Inc. TV appearances include Mary Cook on CBC's North of 60 and guest roles on The Res. She's the author of numerous plays, including Singing Shards, Jumping Mouse, which was nominated for a Dora Moore Award, The Race, and co-writer of the sketch comedy A House Fell on Her Sister with Lee Clark. Hope Matters, co-written with her mother Lee Maracle and sister Tania Carter, is an inspiration as a collection of poetry focused on the journey of Indigenous people from colonial beginnings to the reconciliation. And author Judith Thompson has described the poems written in alternating voices as utterly unique, and yet there is a striking commonality of blood, of perspective, and most of all, how the immense power of female desire is expressed through the power and dynamism of the natural world. Columpa was artistic director and lead instructor of the Manitoba Theatre for Young People's Aboriginal Arts Training and Mentorship Program, and a founding member of both the Indigenous Peoples Arts Alliance and the Eastern Empowerment through the Art Facilitators. Once again, it's an honor to be able to hear both of you today, and we hope that this is the beginning of many conversations that would come our way. So over to both of you. Thank you so much.
And thank you for the generous introduction. I would like to add to that I was completely delinquent in sending bios for the both of us. Again, because of the research project we're doing, and we'll get into that, it's a project honoring our mother's legacy. Emails are getting buried, and I apologize again. That was completely my fault. I want to say a little more about my sister, Tania Carter. She is multi-talented. She's a painter, and she's been painting for decades, and the cover of Hope Matters is her original artwork. I don't know if you can see that.
Yes, we can.
Yeah. She's also an athlete and an activist, and she has employed both those pieces of her heart through the decades, most notably in the summer of 1990, when the Oka crisis was going on. She ran in the Okanagan to Oka peace run and faced stoning from racists and Hell's Angels and people across the country. She faced fear and hunger, physical and spiritual. She's steadfast, and she is been very graceful about picking up cultural positioning as our family's young and capable matriarch in our mother's place. I am doing my best to pick up my role as speaker in our mother's place. It's going to take many children to take her place. She was an amazing person, but my sister is a good step in that right direction. She's also a poet and a playwright. She's got a BA in world literature, studying Indigenous literatures from around the world, and she can say more on that. She's got her master's degree in theater, playwriting. We went to theater school together back in the 1900s, quite literally. And our first international works was at the International Indigenous Education Conference, the second one. We attended the first one at UBC in 1980 something. And then the second one in New Zealand in 1990. She is a playwright. She is a short story writer. She is a mother, and just an all-round beautiful person. Anything else you want to add? That's it. We are humbled and honored to be here. We've been thinking quite a lot about our mother and how we wish to honor her and how we wish to memorialize her. In our culture, we have 4 years to mourn before we need to pick up her basket completely with the gifts she left behind, the legacy gifts. In our lives, there are 4 main times we empty our basket. And what that means is when you leave your childhood, you empty your basket of those experiences and you figure out what you give away to the people coming up behind you and what you keep for your next leg of your journey, and then adulthood, parenthood, grandparenthood, those ages, regardless of whether or not you ever have children. We are much too young for the cultural positioning we've been thrust into. And I myself often feel inadequate. But in the words of our mother, one of the first things that I remember her saying that she repeated through the decades is, even when we're unprepared, we are always ready. And so regardless of how unprepared I feel, I'm ready to stand in her place. It's an honor to breathe our mother, Lee Maracle, CM Lee Maracle's name into this room, into this cyberspace. It's actually quite fitting that we're all connected through the ether. We are connected to her realm and to the realms of all of our ancestors right now by being connected through the ether. And that's not lost on us. We are honored to be here. We are humble. and we are excited to share with you some of the things we've been talking about in regards to our mother. As you may know, since her death, there have been many people taking the opportunity to memorialize her, to honor her in their own way. But our family has chosen to do our mourning work, the work of grief, before we opened our mouths to the world. And we felt ready in this grief journey, walking towards our 4 years, that we are able to begin articulating her presence in our lives, and what we gained from that, and what we miss and feel a loss now. Our mother wore many hats. She was tireless. She was relentless. She was persistent. She was stalwart. And she was steady. In the beginning of her career as a writer, she actually began as an orator, and there's a reason for that. Our mother was one of the few of her siblings that did not attend residential school. She was among the first generation of Native people across Canada to attend public school. And it was a horror for her to be among the first brown children in a sea of white. Daily, there were beatings and more horrific experiences than that she and her siblings went through because of the color of their skin. She used to beg to go to residential school so she could be with her siblings and her cousins, because she was afraid and beaten all the time. She didn't know at that young age what was going on in those residential schools. She just knew the missing and the longing for her family was so deep, and the pain and the abuse she was facing daily was so horrid. Because she did not go to residential school, she was raised as Speaker of the House, meaning historian. There are many types of speakers in our culture. She had access to all of our old people back then, people who predated even the first white people in Vancouver, BC, Canada. Her pappy, Chief Dan George, grew up in a longhouse until they took him away to residential school. And when he graduated, in quotes, when he was a teenager, he walked back to where their longhouse was, and it had disappeared. In its place were these tiny little white houses that we all now live in today in many places around the world. Very nuclear dwellings. Katsalano, who's one of the respected ancestors of this area, she was able to learn from him. Dominic, Charlie, there are so many. And so my sister and I realize very humbly that we are privileged to be daughters of a woman who came from generations of uninterrupted intergenerational oral knowledge transmission. We are daughters of a woman who was raised as a speaker. We are daughters of a woman who was raised in the laws of our people. We are daughters of a woman who faced the brutality of being first generation inducted into white society and their schools. It's not lost on us the positioning my sister and I hold in Canada. We are the first full generation, our age group. We're the first full generation of Native people in this country allowed legally to grow up and be adults. Even so, we are still ruled by the federal government in the Indian Act. And as we all know, we aren't actually Indians. However, I do use that word consciously because legally that is what we are labeled today. Politically, our name is changed about every 10 years for the duration of how long we've been alive. We were born Indians, we became natives, then we became original people, then we became First Peoples, then we became First Nations, then we became Aboriginals, and then finally politically we are now Indigenous peoples. And the government does this so that they can keep us segregated from the rest of the citizenry of this country. If they don't know what to call us, they won't talk to us. The colonization plan is still in full effect, and our mother knew this, and she made sure to impart upon us the need, spiritually, emotionally, physically, and intellectually, to dig and find out what this country is doing to us, what this country is doing to people around the world. Her poetry spoke to that. Her nonfiction spoke to that. Her speeches speak to that. Her standing up in the face of injustice for herself and for others. It was this call to fight for justice, moving from a place of love, moving from a place of peace seeking, that led her to become a part of and one of the co-founding members of the Red Power movement in the 1960s. The full name for that group is NARP, that's the initials, Native Alliance for Red Power. This generation of people, her among them, they sought to educate themselves. A lot of them were people who went to residential school, and I don't know if you know this, but they weren't actually educated. Girls were raised to be seamstresses and house cleaners. Boys were raised to be farm workers. The English they learned was from the Old Testament. So even the English they learned in those schools did not ready them for contemporary life in this country. When she was a member of Red Power, they made it a policy to learn about every political system they could. They read Marx and Engels, they read Mao Zedong, they read Trotsky and Lenin, and many, many others to try to understand systems of policy and politics outside of their own culture, because they understood that. She understood the laws of our people, the laws that feed the land, the laws that feed the water, the laws that feed the air, the laws that feed the earth. She was one of the members of Red Power, which is the short form of Native Alliance for Red Power, who were invited to China and Mongolia in 1975. I have to refer to my sister. In 1975, that group was the first foreign group allowed into both Red China and Inner Mongolia. And this is significant, of course, because of the tensions between Mongolia and China at the time, but also, of course, China being a communist country and North America being a capitalist continent. There were tensions there, and I'm very much understating that, of course. Just before they were supposed to meet and learn from the Black Panthers in the United States, the Black Panthers were slaughtered. After Red Power, and during that time, Don Barnett was the leader of LSM. Mm-hmm. LSM, and I'm sorry, I don't remember what that stands for. Liberation Support Movement, I think. And she was in school as well, and she was working on a project for school, but she didn't want to write it down. And so she orated her first book, Bobby Lee, Indian Rebel. And Don Barnett typed it on a typewriter for her. So our mother began her life in orality. and her life ended in orality. And it's beautiful to me. It's painful, but beautiful to me and my sister and my brothers that she was able to go full circle before her spirit canoe took her home. It's beautiful to us that she managed to move us back home before she went back to the land of spirits. One of the things she would always say is, we are story. And it's from stories of love that we are born, we are called to this earth. And when our work here on the earth is done, it's with love that we are returned back to the land of story, back to the star nations, back to the original world of spirit, which I kind of interpret as energy. We are free from the frailty of our human frame and return to spirit. And so that's what we want to talk about today, is the legacy of orality, the legacy of our speakers. Our speakers speak politics, they speak art, they speak culture, they speak sciences. There are many kinds of speakers in our culture, as I'm sure there are in yours. And she was a historian. And so she moved through her own knowing into her education in Euro-Western sense. And she was a sociologist, or as she liked to call it, dead white man studies. And she thought white people were strange, that they only wanted to study dead white men when there were so many interesting people alive in the world with so much to say. She also took English, of course, and she wanted to write. And there were some sticky times for the people of the Red Power movement in the 70s. And one of the things that was told to her was that the more you're out in the public, the less likely it is that they can kill you. And so she thought, maybe I can put my orality into the written word, which she'd always been in love with, by the way. Her first word spoken in grade school, she was 9 years old before she spoke a word. And the first thing she did was stand up on a desk and shout out a poem she had just been introduced to. So poetry and story have always been a part of her life in Indian way and in white way. So she wrote her first book, Bobb Lee, Indian Rebel, from an oral practice. And after that, she kept writing, but she also kept speaking. I don't know how many people know this out there, but she's won a lot of poetry slams, old school poetry slams, mostly in the United States. And these poetry slams are completely oral. They're not written. And so they give you a topic or what have you, and you have to speak your poem. And she won all the time. And she would do them because we were hungry. So she would join the slams that paid the most so that she could put shoes on our feet or food in our bellies. And she would hitchhike or get a ride with somebody down to the States. Oh, there's a slam in Oregon, let's go. And so from her very young age, her artwork and her orality were always keeping us alive, helping to keep us alive. I wrote down a number of biographical things to say about her, but you can find them on the internet. Numerous awards. I was looking up all the awards she won, all the awards she was nominated for, and it's too much. The books she's written, Bobb Lee, Indian Rebel, I Am Woman, Bent Box, Conversations with Canadians, Raven Song, Celia's Song, talking to the diaspora. And the list goes on. She wrote many things. She even wrote manuals for people who'd ask. She was an expert in PTSD and complex PTSD because somebody, a government organization from the Indigenous community asked her to write this manual for them so that they could help counselors working with people who have complex PTSD or PTSD in their healing work. And so she did a lot of research for a number of years and wrote a manual on the difference in complex PTSD and PTSD. And of course, we have a background in empowerment through the arts. And my mother talked a lot with her sister, our Auntie Joyce Myatt, who was a native healer, but also a therapist. She trained in Indian way and white way. And those are the two women that I started speaking with to develop our empowerment through the arts empowerment training. I have a quote that I'd like to read, or a couple of quotes that I'd like to read about our mom that I just adore. And one of them is, I am writing for the reader who says, okay, I can do something about this. I am writing for our ancestors who were not entitled to write. And I'm writing for our future grandchildren who will need to know their origins. This one reminds me of the poem you read at the top of this segment, which is beautiful. We are obligated to those behind us and those ahead of us. My sister and I very much feel as if we are the conduit generation now, right? In the cultural positioning of having to step into our mother's shoes, that we now are in our family, the conduit between our infinite number of ancestors and our infinite number of grandchildren. And we don't take that lightly. The other quote that I really like, I know Demon knows her personally, but she was very funny and very witty and very sharp. And another quote that I like from her that sums her up for me is, my life has been a long, slow journey over very sharp rocks, but goddamn if I didn't dance over every last one of them. One of the things that our mother was very rigid about is she didn't go backwards. And she would say that to us all the time. Lee does not go backwards. Not even on shopping trips. We'd miss a store and she goes, no, we'll get it next time. Lee does not go backwards. And she'd keep walking. And so it speaks to her resilience and her relentlessness, that quote. One of the things that my sister and I have been doing since she passed is trying to figure out how we honor her and honor our grief journey, and how we honor the path before us once our grieving work is done. And that doesn't mean we stop missing her. That doesn't mean the tears don't flow after those 4 years, but there's grieving work to be done so that we can heal from this and come out people who are culturally intact and functional in two canoes, our Indigenous canoe and this 21st century canoe. And so we are working on a research grant, a research project that we got as a grant from Canada Council for the Arts. And it's honoring the legacy of our mother's orality as an expert, as a CM, and a CM is a respected knowledge keeper. It's our highest recognition of expertise. When she got the Order of Canada, she spoke to a lot of our elders back home because politically she's never been aligned with this government. And she was told that she will accept this honor because they need to know that our experts are on par with them And when you are addressed, you'll not be addressed as OC, you will be addressed as CM. And so those were the conditions under which she accepted that colonial award. The people in our world here need to know that our expertise is on par with anyone else in this country. And so instead of saying Officer of the Order of Canada, Dr. Lee Maracle, we say CM, Dr. Lee Maracle, because it's just as worthy, if not more so, in my own heart and mind. Yeah, I want to give the floor over to my sister. I just wanted to do a brief history of our mom and just some of the things that she's given us. And we want to keep this for ourselves, dedicated to her orality, her systems of orality, even in her written works, and how they impacted us and influenced our moving forward. And so my sister's going to speak and hopefully read.
I just wanted to say one thing to what my sister was talking about. We've been doing this project for a year and basically doing tons of, standard research like internet and books and maps and stuff. And we're also doing interviews, which is such a pride for me to be able to do this kind of work. We wrote the grant during COVID and right after my mom passed, and with the partnership of a white established theater company here, we were able to actually get the grant. And I just wanted to say that in orality for me, as the daughter of my mother, is it relates to the oral transmission part more for me than my academe, more than writing or my playwriting, or not as I wouldn't include poetry in an aside. I say that's a part of the oral transmission, because when we were very small, we were privileged to go to Potlatch, which is something that a lot of people weren't privy to go to. She spent all her pennies taking us up north in these little planes to different communities to go to these potlatch ceremonies. Even though sometimes we wouldn't eat at the end of the month, we still, our cultural knowledge, she really was bent on making sure we had it, and also making sure we had other types of oral transmission, like we did dip net fishing, we did creek fishing, we did even hearing the language. So even though we weren't able to get out of school to go and learn those things in a huge, like for months, we were able to, on certain days in the summer, be brought to do the oral transmission of her generation and older, transmitting knowledge to us that she knew we needed. So that's where I'm at, I guess, with this process of research that we're doing, is looking at the processes my mom had when she was younger, which is she was, she watched people do dugout canoes. She watched people do dance in the longhouse, even though it was just so shortly from being banned. She watched how Chief Dan George taught other people, because he hid it during the banning of culture, banning of potlatch until 1976. So I'm wanting to reestablish the things that I can reestablish in the urban setting that I've grown up in. And so that's all I want to say about our little project that we're doing. I wanted to read a couple of my mom's poems. When my sister first told me a couple of days ago about this, the first things was I wanted to read a couple of my mom's poems that I don't usually read. I know I'm going to read Justice is an Ember, because that's one of my favorites. And I always ask her to read that one when we do readings. But there's a couple that I really like her, that I like, that are shorter. One's called Ta'a, they're coming closer. Ta'a in Hamakmelam means grandmother. Ta'a's eyes squint depth into her 100 years. She watches Mama's magic box. Dogs, guns, and white men kill black men, women, and children. The noise holds us still. I stare at Ta'a's eyes. Her eyes watch, unafraid of seeing. Now the people being shot look like us. We haven't much time. Ta'a. Panzos, Chile, Chiapas, Palestine, downtown East Side. We are disappearing. Ta'a. They're coming closer. And I'll read Justice of an Ember because that's my favorite. It's very. I also wrote poems. I was going to read a couple of my poems that I've written during this research because they speak to her poetry. No, now I can't find it. Okay. I guess shouldn't have marked so many. Justice is an ember. You guys have probably heard this before because I know you've worked with my mom a couple times already. Justice is an ember, burning slow and easy, a fire filled with hope. Hope for our humanity. We stand in the center of a sphere, earth beneath, sky world above, humans all around. Our fire seeks relations with all beings. Justice calls us to burn brightly together. Justice is a song sounding our love for humanity, for life, for freedom. Let our songs ring out. Let our fire burn. Let our humanity sing songs of hope. I cradle this ember, call you to receive it, hold it up toward the sky, bind myself to you. I just wanted to say that even before she published all her books, she always read them to us. So a lot of these poems, especially her poetry, because she never considered herself a poet until after she did Bedbox, the poetry book she did. She always called me and my sister poets. But she used to do renga with us when we were teenagers and preteens. And it was that in school, you take a line and you a start of a story, and then you flip it, and the next person does a line, and the only line you can see is the line before. And then you just go around the whole class, and we used to make stories in our class like that. And with my mom, we used to do poetry. And we used to do it everywhere: coffee shops, bars, schools, and even on the road. And she used to get her cousins involved. And then after a while, we'd get our friends involved. So here we're teenagers, 18, 19 years old, and we've gone to bars during the weekend, but then we all get together in our house and we start writing this renga poems together with our friends and our mother. And it really makes me think of the fact that, she in Hope Matters really, really believed in her mastery of poetry. And, we published Hope Matters in 2019. And she very much walked us through a process of writing collaboratively. So with us, she was able to kind of do the renga, but in a more deep way, in a more sophisticated way, with longer passages. So in the book, you'll see that, our long poems that we wrote together are usually verse by verse by verse. Each one of us writes a verse. She was a very complex thinker, but also very collaborative. Just even sitting close to her during that process, we only had 2 weeks to do the book. but we sat really close together within half a foot of each other. And when we did some readings before the pandemic, people would always ask us how we did it. And I just said, I remember sitting so close to my mother that the only other times I remember being so close is when we were very small children or when I was hugging her as an older person. But being very close and writing poetry in response to like writing somebody writing the first verse and then responding to that verse is really intimate, is really a vulnerable place. Especially, I think, between generations, especially for me as somebody who hadn't written a book, with my mother having so much power in her knowledge and having so many books by then, that the love she gave in those moments of writing with us melted all those, the wall between what I saw her as a CM, a big teacher for hundreds of millions of, just tons of people, and just seeing her as my mother. I couldn't do that in a school. So I'm so glad that she did it at home. We did it in her living room. And it really helped. And I would say that to people that, you just do it in your homes and you sit really close and someone starts. And a lot of women, mothers, and also the daughters, so people my mom's age and people that were much younger than me, said that they were going to do that with their own families, and that it might repair some of the damage in their own families, especially the young women. So I just wanted to say that in memorial of hers, that I really thank her for giving that last piece, because we did want to do it for about 20 years before we actually got to do it together. And I'm thankful for being here and listening to my sister encapsulate my mom's life as good as she can.
As you know, Lee was a teacher, not just to her children, not just to her relatives, but to strangers in places of higher learning institutions. She taught at many universities, University of Toronto, University of Guelph, University of Waterloo, Western Washington University, the University College of the Fraser Valley. I think it's just now called the University of the Fraser Valley. Just to name some. She loved teaching. She always said that when she retired, she wanted to be a teacher. And she got to do that. She taught us many things. Lee's life was very holistic, and she strived to make it holistic. She wanted her life in her yard to be the same as her life in her books. She wanted her life in her home to be the same as her life in the schools. She wanted her life on the road to be the same as the life in her community. And I don't mean same by same activities, but same in terms of being consistent with who she felt she was and how she obeyed her own laws as an Indigenous person. She didn't really care for Canadian laws. She didn't disobey them so that she wouldn't go to jail. But in terms of belief, her core beliefs were Salish beliefs. Her core beliefs were Stalo beliefs. Her core beliefs were Tsleil-Waututh beliefs. Her core beliefs were Métis beliefs. And the core beliefs are our laws. And our laws are to make us better citizens to the other nations of the earth, the plant people, the animal people, the fish people, the bird people, the insect people, the virus people even. We have stories about virus people. We have stories about all the beings we share this planet, this home we call Earth. One of the things that I love is that she taught me how to garden. to build relationship with earth. For many years, I had phobia of bugs. I don't know where it came from, but probably just manifesting all the fears I had in my young life and putting it somewhere, right? But as soon as I learned to garden, it disappeared because I began to build a relationship with the bug people. I began to build a relationship with the earth people, the plant people. And she said, I asked her, when do we harvest? And she says, you have to talk to the plants and they'll tell you. They'll tell you when it's time. And so she always reinforced and encouraged and fosters and gave opportunity for us to learn one of our laws, which is to connect or reconnect. And we start with the inner fire, which is our direct connect to star nations, as we call them. And I interpret that as outer space, but that's just me. She never said that. Mm-hmm. We were born into flesh, but before that we were what the old people for her told her in English is pure thought being. That's as close as they could get to the meaning of the word in English at that time. And I interpret that as energy. But that's not what she told me. That's just what I think. We're here on this earth to connect. And when we truly connect, then our empathy is resilient. Our empathy is far-reaching because everyone becomes a relative. Everyone on the planet. That's why she wrote poems that spoke to the struggles of people in parts of the world she'd never been. That's why she struggled, even through health problems, to travel the world. And I'm so honored to have gotten to be one of the people that managed to get to India twice, to see our indigenous relatives there, to see our Indian relatives there, to be just for a moment a part of the same life that comes from a different place on the wheel. One of our teachings is there's an infinite number of ways to get to the center of the circle. And you choose what's at the center of the circle. And for our mother, one of the centers of her circles was justice. One of the centers of her circles was love. One of the centers of her circles was peace. One of the center of her circles was relationality, connect, reconnect. If there is a disconnect, how do you reconnect? If you have not connected, how can you connect? And this is also why it's such an honor to be a part of this evening with you, where you are, because it's reconnect for me, and it's connect for my sister. And that only good can come from that. And so our mother keeps bringing us together, even from the other side. And so Haichka Mama, Haichka Siem, for being there in this world, in this earth travel, to bring me one step closer to you. And thank you, Demon, for the invite. I know there's many people behind this invite, but he's the one that sent me the email. I'd like to, oh, you got another one? No. I'd like to read a poem or two, if there's time. This one is from Bent Box. Our mother always did slam poetry, and she even wrote down poems and she'd read them. But like Tania said, she never considered herself a poet until somebody said, you've got so many poems, you keep reading them. Some of us know them by heart. Put them in a book. And she said, oh, okay. This one's called Autumn Rose. And it says, this poem, you know what? Just before she passed, my mother said, here, you're going to need these soon. So she gave me her old reading glasses. Autumn Rose. This poem was inspired by a child named Autumn Rose. This poem is not about her, but rather my perception of our self-destruction and the children who are the natural resistance to destruction. Our children are the basis for my optimism. If the state won't kill us, then we will have to kill ourselves. It's no longer good etiquette to headhunt savages, so we'll just have to do it ourselves. It's not polite to violate squaws, so we'll just have to find an Indian to oblige us. It's poor form to let an Indian starve. We'll have to deprive our young ourselves. Blinded by niceties and polite liberality, we can't see our enemy, so we'll just have to kill each other. In this field of dying leaves, dead grass, and rustling winds, blooms a lone autumn rose. I read this poem because it speaks, for me, it speaks to her understanding of colonization. And she always said to us, you have to remember that the end goal of colonization is not what they can do to us, but what they can make us do to each other. And so I never forgot that lesson. And so lateral violence, we have no place for it in our house because that is a part of the colonial plan. But so many of us are stuck in a place where they can't see that. And there's a lot of lateral violence happening in our communities all the way across this country. And I'm so grateful that she wrote that poem. Sharp as it is and stinging as that poem is, it brings to light, this is what they want us to do.
I have another little poem that she wrote called Genocide. It's from Hope Matters. And it says, on June 23rd, 1990, Elijah whispered no. Killing in accord for 18 days, we rejoiced. Until the guns went off at Oka, we thought we really could just say no.
Yeah. Yeah. When Elijah said no, we thought we had a real chance. But it's all a part of the game. This poem is in Hope Matters.
Almost in the perfect middle.
Yeah. Isn't that weird? And it's called Blind Justice. This is another poem by our mom. Okay. Blind Justice. Slailwatuth, Chetus, Sanok. The mountains rise behind my ancestors and disappear in the sail of them, orchestrated by a department that seeks their vanquishment. $25 becomes millions in the blink of an eye. $25 becomes hunger in the next blink, becomes inadequate in the next blink, becomes the murder of cedar, sea vegetables, osk, whale, and sockeye. As I struggle to mature without food, I am sorry too, Mr. Harper. Sustained violence. We could have recovered from smallpox. We had shwai shwai. We had medicine. We had healing songs and dances, but they were banned. Violation. We could have recovered. We had Christian friends, but they too were banned. Banned from speaking, organizing for land rights, fishing rights, the right to sing and dance, the right to raise our children, right to educate them. We could have included you in ceremony of facing ourselves, recovering ourselves, transforming ourselves, but our ceremonies were banned. Still, I am not tragic. Not even in my addicted moments, a needle hanging from the vein of my creased arm. I was not tragic. Even as I jump from a boat in a vain attempt to join my ancestors, I am not tragic. Even in my disconnection from song, from dance, I am not tragic. Even in seeing you as privileged, as an occupier of my homeland, in my homeless state, even as men abduct us as we hitchhike along these new highways, to disappear on this long colonial road, I refuse to be tragic. My body has always understood justice. Everyone eats, and so we included you. There is no word for exclusion, so your whiteness was not a threat. We have lived for 14,000 years on this coastline. This is not the first massive death we endured. We girded up our loins, recovered and rebuilt. We are builders, we are singers, we are dancers, we are speakers, and we are still singing. We are dancing again. We are speaking in poetry and story on film. In the millennia we have lived, there are constants. The tide will retreat and it will return. The fishes that are threatened will return. The people who died are returning. The plants, the trees, the animal world will recover. It may take another tsunami that nearly kills us all. It may take earthquakes and storms, but the earth, waters, plants, and animals will recover. I am a witness. I am inspired by the earth's response to desecration. A tsunami cleanses the earth. A hurricane rearranges rivers. An earthquake is an objection. And we will all have to face ourselves, face our sense of justice to include all life. We'll need to nourish our imagination to include a new equality and summon our souls, hearts, and minds to a justice which includes all life. I don't know how much time we have left. So we were told 30 to 45 minutes.
Yes.
So
I mean, if we had our way, we would ask you to read more and more. But I think there are also people who would like to ask some questions because, first of all, Migwej, thank you so very much. This has been wonderful because I think while you were living your memories with respect to Lee, we, all of us, many of us in this room, if I may call it a room, we're also living our memories with Lee. So thank you very much for doing that. And I remember one of the first emails that I received from her, which said that, I had said something wrong, and she corrected me. And as you would know, she wouldn't be very diplomatic about it. So, as you would realize, and I apologize, but what she said has always stayed with me, is that the fact that you write from so many miles away moves me. So keep making mistakes, but it's okay. So I think that has always stayed with me. Thank you so very much for doing this. And also our deepest respect to you for for being able to speak with us despite the fact that there is grief and mourning. So we are very honored that you decided to do that. And we are very respectful of that process. So thank you very much for this. This is very kind of you. Very kind of you. I'm sure there will be questions. And, there are two things that I'm tempted to do while we try to look at questions. One of the things that we're looking at, I mean, if you look at Lee, something that she says is that I'm going to write books and I'm going to work with story the way we always have, When the old people would start telling some 10,000-year-old story, and by the time they got past the beginning, they were telling it like it was happening now. I know writing it won't work exactly the same as telling, but I think I can get close. I want to spiral people down into our own stories so that these people can know who we are and who we will always want to be, as my uncle Leonard says. And I'm tempted at this point to end with a bit of Lee's voice. So if you don't mind, I'm just going to, before I ask questions, meanwhile, if there are questions, please feel free to write it in the chat box. There's a 1 minute 36 seconds video of Lee, and that I think has been an inspiration for us, and I'm hoping that you can see it, if that's okay with Timan. That is, it's just because we should end this with Lee's laughter. I mean,
Yes.
that is something that can happen, and I'll just try to show this over here.
Debasri, I agree with you totally.
Yeah, thank you,
Lee's
Sucharita.
laughter has stayed with us, at least
Yep.
with me. I
Is this
recall it so
visible?
fondly.
Is this visible to everyone?
We can see it.
Yes.
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 All right. Okay. Thank you, Professor Harira.
Yes.
Nice to hear your voice.
How has storytelling in whatever form influenced your life?
You don't tell your kids what to do. But if you find them being creepy little people, you tell them a story.
Brats? Being brats?
Brats! Yeah, there you go. Them, come here, I'm going to tell you a story. And then you tell them a story of consequences. But also when the chiefs met and the knowledge keepers met, or the Siams as we call them, we don't call anybody elders. Nobody on the West Coast likes to think they ever get old. When they gather and they talk about a subject, if they get to a difficult part and they see the tension rise in the circle, someone will tell a story to reset the direction of the conversation. The storyteller will tell the story that will reset the direction in a good way. We're always heading to the good mind. I don't actually believe you achieve good mind until you die, but that's just me. But you're still trying for it all the time. And good mind, according to the story, a stone in a quiet pond, and all the ripples that emanate from that stone are understood.
That was a good day.
Thank you. Thank you for listening. I assume there might be, a desire to have the conversation going for a little more time, if that's okay with y'all. Maybe if I don't know whether Dhiman is around or he lost connectivity, but
I'm here. I'm here.
oh yeah, Dhiman around 10-12 minutes. Is that okay?
Absolutely, yes.
Dhiman?
Yeah, he says it's okay.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Questions or anything somebody wants to share a memory, please do now, and you're most welcome to do that. Yeah.
I'm not sure there was
Anybody
if
would
Titir
like to
is
do that?
online, but Titir had taken an interview of Lee just a few months.
Yeah, if you could share
before.
that, Shritadevi.
I was just wondering if Titir is around. Titir, are you there?
No,
Sorry?
she's not around. If you
Oh,
could,
she's not
if you
around.
could share that, you could tell that, or you could explain your memories with
Yeah,
Lee.
because Titir was working on her MPhil thesis on Lee's writings, and she took an online interview. This was, I think, just a few months before Lee passed away. And we keep referring back to this. And Lee had promised that she would meet our MA final year class, because the class does Bobby Lee Indian Rebel with us from the perspective of colonization. And we had long discussions with Lee about the reception of the text from the Indian context. I mean, the impact of colonization on India and a comparison with the impact it had on Canada. So maybe some other time I'll be able to share it with you. We could have done it if Titi was around, but that's what I wanted to share.
Oh, we'd love to hear that.
Definitely.
It's beautiful. There are a lot of similarities between our two countries.
Professor Hariharan?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Hi, Columpa. Bob, I hope you remember me. Yeah. Hi.
Yeah.
We had a remarkable day together, I must say, a whole day in Trivandrum when you had come with Lee and the students were there. I still remember the energy, I must say, that was there in that hall, especially with both of you singing. That tribute, it still reverberates, I must say, in my ears. And the day-long workshop that we had, where both of you encouraged all the students to write poetry. and it was so alive. I mean, it was a very, very rich experience. I don't think we had anything like that after that, though we did have poetry sessions, but nothing that came near that experience, because there was so much of involvement, so much of participation, there's so much of life in that. And I think a lot of students, I certainly must say that they were all taken in, quite taken in by that. And some of them have really gotten into writing poetry. But more than that, I think the impact that the two of you did have there, the discussions, for example, that we had before that meeting in the department where we all had breakfast together, and that conversation, it personally for me was a very, very enriching experience, about which I also talked about very briefly this morning at the seminar. It's with a lot of let's say, I don't know what words one could actually use for it, but I think this is the moment where we learn to connect, reconnect, as it were. And the only feeling that I have is that I am reconnecting here in Lee's absence. So that somehow is a. I don't know whether connections are like that. I don't know if that is the reason why we talk about reconnecting. So perhaps as we reconnect virtually, perhaps I am also reaching out to Lee up there in the stars. That's all I can say. And I don't want to say thank you, but I think I hope fervently that we keep this connection, we get reconnected as long as it is possible. Thank you very much.
I still remember that too. That was an introduction to orality as we do it. It's a very physical process. It's a very spiritual process, very emotional and intellectual. We're trying always to connect the four faculties of what we are as humans, and it was connect and reconnect. And I remember the name that we used, the title, The Journey Home.
Yes.
I remember that to this day, and that was Lee's doing. Is that the first home is inside? It's that spirit fire that connects us to the other side through the stardust particles in our brain and the firelight inside of us. And so the journey home means so much to so many of us, and at different times in our lives. And I feel that too, that the journey home for Lee, it doesn't stop the reconnect for us.
And I just want to say something to that. When my mom passed, they did a 4-day burning. So that's like a traditional thing here on the West Coast. So they burn her things, and they had the fire going for 4 days. And the person who was running the fire said that in the spirit world, my mom was helping with burying and putting the residential school children away to their resting place, and so their spirits could be with her. And so she was doing that with my grandmother. One of the person said, I see your grandmother and I see your mother working together up there.
The work is never done, even the spirit. So there's a lot of unmarked graves at residential schools, and so those are the children the person doing the ceremonial work said that she was working to bring home.
So I think we're all connected, and that she's hearing what she needs to hear up there, and she wants to hear to make her happy, and she's probably being happy with everybody up there that that she was missing when she was here.
Thank you. I think Shuddhadeep also had a question, and we also put it in the chat box a tribute that we had done for Lee Maracle after her passing on from the Center for Canadian Studies. I'll post it again if you don't get to see it now. Don't worry about that. But
Okay.
over to you, Shudhadeep. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Columpa and Tania, for the talk. Especially thank you, Tania, for reading out from the genocide poem, because I recently found out that Lee was very vocal about the Zionist settler colonialism in Palestine.
Yep.
But my question was related to a possibility of having a Lee Maracle archive, and whether it exists, or if you are thinking or building, working on it as daughters, as family, and also as sister activists. Drawing from your words, too much, because Lee Maracle has worked too much, so it's very difficult to archive. Collaboration, because archiving an individual within the indigenous predicament is impossible, because we cannot think of an individual archive rather than thinking of collaboration. And also the question of orality, which is very difficult to archive. So have you been reflecting on having a Lee Maracle archive? Because I have looked on the internet and it's very fragmentary archives that exist. One of them is obviously Center for Canadian Studies, Jadavpur University.
Yeah.
But do you think of having one?
Yeah, we do. My sister and I and my brothers have talked about that. We are going to complete our 4 years in the grief journey first. Even though we're talking about that, we want there to be something for the world, to stand for the world, to stand in the world. But we're told to finish the 4 years of grieving work so that we are not, so that we are able to connect cleanly to that process. And I don't mean clean and dirty. Maybe that's not the right word. To connect solely with that work, right? So we are thinking of that, but we want to finish this. We want to respect and do the grieving work so that when we come out of this 4 years, we can hit the ground running. And yeah, collaboration, it's going to take collaboration, because I don't think we even know all of what she's done. She's worked on every continent except Antarctica.
I think, and this is just me, because, you know, Columpa is a very conceptual. I'm very like feet on the ground. Let's get it done. I mean, I don't mind leaving my personal email, and probably Columpa doesn't mind, with you, because at the end of the 4 years, which is next year, we wouldn't mind contacting everybody that has privy to the archives, because in this research, we know that everything is fragmented, even with the writings about West Coast knowledge. And it's made to do that. It's just like residential school kids were sent, you know, hundreds of miles away. You know, a lot of our masks are in New York, which is on the other side of the country, or other side of the continent. Oh yeah, and a lot of them are in Europe too. So I wouldn't mind that. I don't know if you would stay in contact with us for that, you know, for the year from now, to be able to do
I think we would all be delighted. So can I say a resounding yes from all of us?
Yes,
So
absolutely.
it's just a yes from all of us.
That's wonderful.
Because one of the things about this project is it is going towards archives, but also having those people who are living, not my mom, but have those people who are living to be able to talk to people instead of reading a book. So then people will get the names of all these people and actually go to them for oral knowledge.
Yeah, I don't know how many people know this, but when she was still in Toronto, she was working, he's passed on to Alex McKay, Anishinaabe elder out there. They were speaking for quite a few years about how to create a living oral library that systemically held copyright for the speaker, had a remuneration process for the speaker, and so it would be connecting story keeper to seeker of knowledge, and they didn't figure out how to do that. So I think she would be I mean, I can't speak for her, but I think this would be very much in the vein of the work she was already trying to do, is to somehow, and this is what we're thinking about too in our journey, it more personally right now, but how do we keep her expertise in orality alive now that she is not? And so one of the things is we need to pick up that basket of her knowledge of intergenerational oral knowledge transmission, how it works, how succession planning works inside of that Indigenous Salish structure, how people can be involved in that process. One of the things is, in my house, the way that I would build succession is make sure I've got people in my house that will take over that story or that knowledge, the knowledge story. But I also go out into separate houses that are unrelated to my own, just in case, because we lived all in one big house here on the coast, disease wiped us out like that. It took one smallpox blanket underneath a house and you kill an entire village. So the succession process of orality ripples out and out and out, and the houses that maybe are unrelated to you, they'll do
remember the evenings that we went for shows, like how excited she was when the Windigo Tale was premiered at the native at the festival.
Oh, he's frozen. You're frozen.
Practice, which was Rage, where Nimki and all, they were all there together, and Sid's son said after the performance, "I love you, Mom, for what you do." And Lee continued with that the next day also. When we met, he said that, you know what, that is what we call stories. When a young child could connect to what was happening to his family, his members, that is precisely what we called by being connected. So I became connected with you all, I would say, becoming a bigger part of the family structure, I would say, like how we develop our connections. And when all of you came to Ahmedabad, and we developed that theater narrative, I would say, without understanding each other's language, because Kalpana did not understand English, Lee did not understand Kalpana's language, but they all performed to Lee's poem performance. So where the word Taha again came, and we all got connected by saying that we all have songs and we all cry for our elders, because singing that dirt songs is sacred to the criminal tribes also here in India, who were the Charas. So when they all sang together, it was beyond the spoken language, beyond the written language, or be it the language that we comprehend or we understand as language. It was a language of humanity, I would say. So I still fondly recollect those.
Oh, you're frozen. You're frozen.
Developments and science in Ahmedabad, at Ahmedabad, and
Dhiman, the connection,
a
I think,
particular
is
GDP where people say that, okay, fine, we will take care. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes, we can hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, got disconnected. So when we presented that piece in front of students of development science at Ahmedabad, IIM Ahmedabad, Indian Institute of Management, students say that all this while we have been talking about development in India, not thinking about what we did to our indigenous population also. So I believe that when we talked about creating ripples, I think this is precisely what she meant. And I was also recollecting fondly Kateri Ekwensi Dam because I was living on a reserve, and she taught me how to locate the trail, the Bruce Trail.
Oh yeah.
Why is it so important? Why is it so important for us to realize the trail? What is the significance of trail? And she left me in the almost there was a powwow happening in her reserve, and I was living in a one-man tent which she had given me. And next morning she came, you know what, you survived. I high bear alert. See what the bear have done to our house. You come and see. So that was her way of inducting me, and then of course we started developing these contacts. And when Lee came here twice, she said that you must have been there for some reason, and we are here for some reason. And I think today also here we are in this room fondly recollecting her works, our journey, remembering her. I believe that that is very important. And Lee was very much involved in the Indigenous Sovereignty Week in Toronto, which you rightly pointed out. I was also there as a student, and she said that, "Are you going to walk that extra mile with us, oh boy?"
Yeah.
And so I also participated in that Indigenous Sovereignty Week. I still have the manifesto where Lee spoke, and it exposed me to this entire world of native insurgencies across Canada, which included hyperwash crisis, what happened to people across the reserves. And I still have I have that booklet. It was published in 2010. It was just one of those booklets which she just handed over to me near the Native Center on Spadina.
Yeah.
So you can understand, for me, it's like going like walking that trail, I would say, which she left for me. And that is why I think that we approached you, and she's with us, I believe, then, and meaningfully we are connecting with her.
I
So
recall,
Yeah.
I recall too,
yes,
Dhiman, the hours spent with
Yeah.
Lee
absolutely.
in her office at the First
Yes,
Nations House
Yes.
discussing a number
absolutely.
of issues.
Absolutely. So,
Jose, I think there
and
Yeah,
are a
I
few
know.
more raised hands.
I think we have a bit of time because Titir has joined, and Titir took, as Professor Chattopadhyay was informing, she took one of these interviews with Lee during the lockdown, and Titir,
Titir, could you
to
just
share a bit of it,
tell us when you took, even if you can't share it, if you can tell us a little bit about
the experience.
Hi everyone. First of all, my apologies. I got disconnected due to some technical errors, and I wasn't there right when Shri Charitadi and Debashriti were talking about it. Probably. First of all, I want to share how beautiful the lecture today was. The discussion, rather. It took me right back to my MPhil days when I was actively working on Miss Maracle's writings. Three of her texts, Bobb, I Am Woman, and My Conversation with Canadians. And I also got this fantastic opportunity to have a video conference call to have a discussion with her. It was around May 2021, as far as I remember. And it was kind of a volatile time for all of us because we were still recovering from the pandemic, and things were not exactly convenient for either of us, but she still managed to take some time out, and she sat with me, and she answered all my questions very diligently, and she listened to what I had to say. But what was most important about the interview, or what will always remain with me till my last days, I guess, is how she changed my perspective about indigenous literatures of Canada. She actually, through her answers and through the discussion, I realized how differently we approach, or how much we have to learn about indigenous literature, because she made it so clear how different it is for an indigenous person when they do not just sit down in front of the typewriter and write, but rather they're just telling the story, how people can become part of the story, they can continue with the tradition. And there was a bit of a conflict regarding if I should call her texts autobiographical texts or not, because according to my preconceived notions, I was kind of assuming all three of her texts that I mentioned as autobiographical. But then through the discussion, I think my perspective also changed when she pointed it out that how indigenous writers do not abide by the Western dictums of genres, and they do not have the liability to adhere to any of the Western generic markers such as autobiographical text or anything else for that matter. So it is about expressing, it is about showcasing the resistance, it's about having the opinion and telling the world that all of you have an opinion, all of the indigenous people, they have an opinion of their own. And I think it's important for us to know how to listen to them, not to mark them or not to just define them according to some loosely based Western terms and dictums, but rather just to know about them patiently and to hear from all of you about the work that you all are doing so gracefully. So it was really a moment of honor for me to sit down with Miss Maracle, and it was a very interesting conversation that we had. I also had Professor Chattopadhyay and Professor Dottore with me for the meeting that we had, and they could also share some of the moments from the interview. I wish I could show some clippings right now, but actually it's on my computer and it's not actually arranging at this point. I could
Not
try
with you.
to show some, but we'll definitely share the interview with you both at a later hour so that you can also take a look at it.
And I just want to say that I'm just going to whisper a little thing to my sister that she did an interview with Lee in May 2021. But when you're talking about autobiographical with Indian Rebel, I'm Woman, and Conversations with Canadians, of course, you know, that's for Canadians. But I know Conversations was just, you know, everybody said, I want all these questions answered. And so everybody would always ask her questions. And so she wrote Conversations with Canadians so that people wouldn't continue to ask the same questions. And then I Am Woman was a compilation of generational knowledge. So Rusty, for instance, was from her mother's generation. So there's like different ages in there, but she's kind of at, some people call it a sociological historical text in academe. She did take anthropology and sociology as her 2 degrees, and she didn't take literature because literature, she said, required that I guess what people are thinking, and I don't want to guess what anybody's thinking, or, you know, why they write their books. She said, I don't want anybody to guess why I'm writing, just ask me. So she didn't take literature degree. I took literature degree, but I took it because I love to read, and I wanted to be, you know, in school doing it so that, you know, I wouldn't have to try to fit it into my own life. Yeah, so that's all I want to say about that. Yeah.
Thank you so much to everyone for their inputs and for this conversation. And like everyone said, I'm hoping that this would give us an opportunity to reconnect. I would again want to end with Lee's laughter, and I'm leaving these images that she had with us at the Center for Canadian Studies. It's there as a link on your message box. Thank you everyone for being with us today. It's been an honor to have everyone. And I'm hoping, and it's been, I know for the organizers of the conference, this has been a long day. So thank you for the opportunity. Thank you very much, Columpa and Tania, for being with us. Everyone who played an active role in the conversation, because for all of us, Lee has been an inspiration. So thank you very much. Over to the organizers now. Thank you so much.
Made me feel really good.
Thank you, Miraj. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone for the wonderful session and also the very intriguing and great interaction. As we conclude the first day of the conference, we would express our sincere thanks to all the eminent speakers and our esteemed audience for being here with us all day. Tomorrow, the second and the last day of our conference will begin at IST 9:30 a.m. with the second plenary session. Thank you and a very good night to you all.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you
Thank
everyone
you,
for
Thank
everyone.
you.
joining.
Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Bye.
Have a good day. Both of you
Good
have a
night,
good day in Canada. Good
Have a
morning to
good
you.
day
Yeah.
from the
I
sunshine.
know it's really
everyone.
early. Good evening.
And good
In
night to
Canada.
us.
Bye bye, everyone.
And good
Bye.
night
Bye
to
bye.
everyone else.
Bye.
Yes.
Night.
Bye. Bye. Bye.